Hello everyone, welcome to App Dev's guest lecture. Today I will be talking about app development. My name is Corwin. I have previously designed 3 games for the Android. I have also created many tiny games for my computer, and let's just get straight into it. A lot of the times individuals will pick up an engine and they'll start diving into it, and before you know it, they'll quit even before they finish the first game because the experience was so frustrating. It seems like it's going nowhere. I believe that I can help you avoid some of the common pitfalls that many new individuals trying to get into game design often fall into. The first thing that you will want to be careful about is scope. Many people pick up game design or want to get into game design hoping that they'll make the games that they often play. So unfortunately, most of the time, this is just not going to be possible. Games like God of War, Final Fantasy, Fortnite, all of these games require a tremendous amount of individuals and people to make the games happen. And this is just something that you are not going to be able to do as a new beginner, as well as just being one individual in comparison to an entire corporation that are funding these individuals to create these games. Your goal for your first game should be to get something built that you can actually play, even in the most rudimentary fashion, as soon as possible. Think of your first game as a learning exercise, not your master's work. If you start with a huge project, you'll find that you don't know where to begin and you'll get boggled down by bits and pieces that have no tangible results. And it seems like you're not making any progress at all. You'll hit so many roadblocks that you don't know how to overcome and simply just give up. Trust me, keep it simple. I personally advise you to not generate your own ideas and create your own games. Many times when you generate your own ideas, you become fixated on that idea and spend more and more time attempting to create something that your current ability most likely cannot accomplish. On top of that, you will slowly find that you will attempt to add more and more features onto your game, onto an already enormous catalog of ideas, causing most individuals to never finish. Think of Cyberpunk 2077. Too many features and not enough polishing. I would highly recommend you mimic pre-existing games such as Snake, Pong, and Flappy Bird, which result in maximum amounts of times coding and practicing game design while having an end goal. Finish copying this simplistic game. Another way that I found that is really helpful in creating games are game jams. What these game jams do is you and a couple of your friends come together or by yourself, and your goal is to create a game under either 24 hours or 48 hours. The entire purpose is to ensure that you have a working product at the end of the 24 or 48-hour period. This entire point is that it puts a hard deadline on you, and so you are pushed to push out a game that is simple and yet fun. Because a lot of the times people will end up trying to create games that are too extensive for themselves, and the entire point that I've mentioned so far, I will keep on addressing over and over again, is to start simple and always finish quick. Your goal is to have quantity over quality when you're creating games when you initially start, and that is the reason why I recommended copying games. Once you've gotten your hand down on creating multiple games and having a good feel about knowing how to create games, then you go towards actually trying to design a game, and that is an entire beast of itself. One individual that I would recommend that you guys watch is Game Maker's Toolkit. He makes amazing videos on how to actually design a game that is fun, intuitive, and overall engaging. Because a lot of times what you'll find is that you might have played a lot of games, but you don't know how to make a game that is actually fun. And that's exactly where Game Maker's Toolkit comes in. There's a lot of subtleties and nuances, such as like the camera and how to use Quest, because a lot of times what you might make is games that you actually hate on, such as the EA big budget games like Assassin's Creed, which just has a bunch of side missions that aren't actually that engaging in comparison to something like Stardew Valley. While the games are very, very similar with their side quests and stuff like that, one game is people find incredibly engaging, and one game people always hate on. So let's talk about game design. When it comes to game design, you might know how to code, but game design is an entirely different beast. Now, I am not a professional game designer. I've just created games as a hobby. However, there are people like Mark Brown, who is the creator of Game Maker's Toolkit, who creates amazing videos on game design and exactly what you should be doing in order to ensure that your game is enjoyable. So there's like videos like what makes a good combat system, what about the camera, and there's a lot of subtleties and nuances when you play a game that you don't realize. Like for example, a lighting is an incredibly important technique. There's also psychology based on like the people and game designers employ psychology in order to push players to do specific things that you as a player might not even notice. There are things like dynamic difficulties within Resident Evil, and there's a lot of different subtle nuances and techniques that you will not realize as a player. In addition to this, Game Maker's Toolkit also has a few videos on what certain gaming companies do in order to create their amazing games. So here I have Nintendo putting play first. Nintendo has a model to not ensure, but to make games that are always on top of the list. When either it is Mario, Mario Odyssey, Mario Kart, Legend of Zelda, all of these games have always been massive hits. And one of the main reasons is because they have this philosophy of putting play first. And so by watching these videos, you're able to not just understand the subtle nuances on how to create games, but on top of that, you also learn the overall model that they employ in order to create games that you might not know how to do. One thing to keep in mind is that when you first start creating games or trying to design games, you should not think about level design. Level design takes a lot of time away from coding and creating a game that is fun and engaging. It doesn't matter how many levels you create, 100, 1,000, if the underlying mechanics of the game are not fun. And as a result, you should always try to pump out games, see if people actually enjoy them, and if you and your friends really, really enjoy it, then you can consider creating levels. However, I personally would recommend creating mechanics for the game that are fun and engaging over level design. Level design is something that you might consider in the future, maybe once you create a game that as I said, a lot of people like. Ultimately, level design should be one of your last steps. On the topic of YouTube videos and YouTubers, one of the most valuable assets that you get living in the modern age is the entire catalog of YouTube, online courses, Stack Overflow, and just Google. A lot of the times what you'll find is that a simple search on YouTube and you'll find thousands of individuals that have tutorials on how to create games, how to design games, which software you should use, everything and anything. On top of that, once you pick a platform, what you will find is that a lot of the times there will be experts everywhere that will answer your questions whenever you have a problem. And if you ever do have a problem, you can always search that on Google and have Stack Overflow. And the thing that is incredibly nice about coding is that you don't need to take any courses at Cornell to be able to do it. However, Cornell, our model is any person, any study, and we have Professor White, who teaches game design both for mobile and for the PC, and he is incredible. He has even created his own game engine for. He has even created his own game engine for you to be able to create your own games instead of using Unity. So always remember to make use of your resources, because there are a bunch of courses that you can take if you find that YouTube videos aren't enough and you want to find people that have similar interests with you, because with game design you can find like-minded individuals and you will be forced to create games with them that you personally enjoy. On top of that, there are some game creating competitions that they host once a year that you can participate in. So there's honestly not any reason why you should not start creating video games. If you like and if you enjoy game design, it's very, very easy to get into, and you should not allow your lack of understanding of game design to inhibit you from creating things that you love. Thing that is really important is understanding your resources. Are you a great artist but you've never coded? In that case, have your game lean on your artistic skills. However, in most cases, you probably are not that good at art or music, and in that case, you should embrace it and accept that. While there is that possibility that you can create your own art and design your own music, you can just as easily take designs off the internet as well as asset stores. There is an amazing amount of stuff that you can get for free, from music to art to sound effects. Here are some examples. Here you just click on itch.io. This is a website that provides free assets. So if you just click on the first one, just look at it, you can see that this is anything that can fit your theme, and this is all free. You just download it. You can donate to the creators if you want to. However, you can always just not donate any money because it is actually free. And so if I'm scrolling through, there is something for everyone, and there is at least one asset that fits the theme that you're looking for. You shouldn't focus on creating your own art because there's all these free assets here that are literally here to help you focus on designing the games instead of on the art. Finally, there's always this fixation on choosing an engine. Honestly, just pick anyone up here or do your own research and pick anything that you want, because ultimately there's not that big of a difference when it comes to any of these platforms, and these differences only start appearing at high-end levels of programming. So honestly, you should just pick one and focus on game design instead of the engine. I personally started by using processing, and this is what I will be using for some demonstrations in a sec. Hello everyone, this is a programming tutorial on how to code Snake on processing. I personally don't recommend processing. However, I believe that it's very important to demonstrate how easy it is to start programming yourself and to just get into it. So here I believe we will be ultimately creating Snake in less than 100 lines of code. And this is to demonstrate to you that you can create games. I will try to explain everything that is going on, and so let's get started. So first off, with processing, there are two functions that are vital to actually running the program. So first is void, void setup, and then draw. What void does is just use it as like initializing all your variables and stuff like that. Here I need to initialize the size, which I put 600, 600. This is just an arbitrary number that I put. Next thing is draw. What draw does is it draws everything within the code, I believe 60 times a second. So it just keeps on drawing it, which is what ultimately makes the application seem like there is animations. Boom. I just copy pasted a lot of code, so let me just go over everything. So first off, I set the background to white. So white. The thing that's amazing about processing is that it makes it really, really simplistic for you to be able to code. So here we have a function called background, and then all you have to do is plug in an RGB value. So this is the RGB value of white. And then here we are creating lines. So the command for lines is just this. And what you do is you pick 2 points. So the start and end points of a line, and then you draw it. So basically I'm going through a for loop and I am drawing lines 20 pixels apart. Alright, next thing that I am doing is I create 2 array lists to represent the x and y coordinates of each body part of the snake. here I just pasted in code that represents the snake. So this array, here we have x and y represent the x and y components of the snake. So each integer in this array represents one block of the snake. So if we look at this picture, if the snake only has one bit, so this is one bit of the snake, but if you use an array list, because there could be multiple blocks of the snake. I added the snake here, and here is where I draw the snake. So I have a fill command. It is the same as background. You just put in the RGB values, which here is just green, as you previously saw. And then to draw a rectangle, all I have to do is put in the x and y coordinates of the rectangle, and then the width and the height. So here, the x and y represent the top left corner of the rectangle. So this spot right here is the x and y, and then this is the width and this is the height. Alright, so I just pasted in code, and what this code does is just move a rectangle across the screen. So first let me just demonstrate that it works. So here you can see the snake moving across the grid field. And what I've done here is first I do if frame count is a multiple of 5, then I do all this. So what this essentially does is, because there's 60 frames per second, and what this is doing is says every 5 frames move. So instead of having the snake skirt across the screen, it moves in little intervals, which is why you can see it like visually move from one block to the other. Now what this does is it adds a new snake head to the direction that it is facing. And what this does is it removes the tail of the snake. Alright, but if we comment this code out, what you will see is that the snake actually elongates across the screen because we're not removing the tail of the snake. So what you have to remember is that all we have to do is add a new head and then remove the tail. We don't care about the parts in the middle of the snake because those stay put. Now for the directions. What I have a dx matrix and dy matrix. What this dx matrix represents is that for every index, it represents the direction that the snake is going. So for index 0, it's going up, then down, then left, then right. And this is just a way to keep track of it so that when I get here, I can just add that direction to the head of the snake. Now, this might be a little confusing right now, and don't worry, you can pause the video, and if you have any questions, you can message me after class. But the entire point of this demo is not to teach you exactly how to code Snake, but instead to demonstrate that coding Snake can be done in less than 100 lines of code. All right, I just pasted in some more code, and basically what this is doing is there's a function called key press that it's called when your key is pressed, and so basically this key is a variable that processing actually gives to you. It's the current key that you're pressing. So if it's W, and the new direction is 0, which we said was up, then down, then left, then right, which are the indexes that we specified up here. Now, here's the thing. When it's size 1, it can move in whichever direction we want it to. However, say it is size 2 or a long snake and it's going upwards. We don't want the snake when it's going upwards to be able to directly go downwards. It should only be able to go straight, then left, and right. It can't turn 180, right? And this is what this batch of code does. So it's a little difficult to read, but it's basically saying if it's going up, it can't go down. If it's going left, it can't go right. If it fits all these criteria, then I set the direction to the new direction. So let's just see this run. So you can see I am now moving the snake. All right, I just pasted in some code. What this code does is just to check if the snake has hit any sides of the wall. Now, one thing to remember is that in the array, index 0 is the head. So that's why I can do get 0, because it's always going to be the head. So let's just check that it works. Now, if it hits the side, boom, the game stops, and it's game over. We won't add a game over screen for this one because we're just trying to get the functionality of Snake to work. All right, next thing that I have to do for this program is to add an apple. Right, so first I have an int array that contains the apple's matrices. I just set the first apple to always be 10, 10. If I was going to be more thorough, I should definitely set it down here and randomize it. But because it's just a simple demo, I will not be doing that. So here I just draw the apple, and this is already code that you've seen. It's just I fill it with red and then I draw a rectangle. Now here is the more impactful code. So for this code, what it is doing is if it is over an apple, it will not remove its tail. So it's always adding and then subtracting. But if it eats an apple, it does not subtract, and this ultimately enlarges the snake. So here you go. An apple, nice. Another one. Another one. All right, I just pasted in this code. So what this code does is it checks to see if the coordinates of the head of the snake is ever equal to any part of the overall snake. And if it is, then it's game over. So what you'll see is that if I eat some fruits, and I run into myself, ooh, there we go. I die. And yeah, this is 85 lines of code. I have a lot of comments on here and a lot of white spaces in order to make it look clean. But yeah, 85 lines of code in order to create this simple snake game. Now, obviously, I could keep track of a score, but the entire point is not to make a perfectly polished game, but to get the mechanics down. And while this one is a little bit more elegant because there's a lot of people online that have already attempted to make Snake, and so this is probably one of the most elegant ways of making it. And you might, when you personally do this, it might take you a little bit longer in order to do it. However, this should not inhibit you from trying to create your own games. All right, thank you for attending my guest lecture, and I hope that you enjoyed watching me code Snake and telling you a little bit about game design.